Hi, my name is Callie Metler, and I'm here today with Ivana Fast and Dana Fast, and they are the authors of the new book that we're putting out this next month of Good in the Midst of Evil. And Ivana's holding it up right now, and so you can see a picture of Dana in the middle of her parents on the cover. And so Dana, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book and what that was like for you to kind of relive those memories?
Why did you write the book? Why did I write the book? Because I had a lot of friends and there was some family. And they said, you were the oldest from your generation in the family. You were the child, but you were actually a teenager. So you can talk about something from the point of view of growing girl. And so people will understand more what is going on in your mind. And that's about it.
You were 8 years old when the war started, correct? So, and how old was your brother?
He's 5 years younger, so I was 8, he was 3.
Okay. So, I don't want to give too much of the book away, but I know that you mentioned several times in the book how you grew up really quickly because of what was going on around you. And did you feel at the time that you kind of saw what was happening? I mean, I know that it was kind of, at first it was a slow escalation, but what did it feel like when things started to change around you?
Okay, if you are 8 years old, you don't really understand very much, very deep what is really going on. But you see that the life as it was before is crumbling. That we are not going for the country vacation with the whole family. Something is going on.
Yeah.
We are at home. There are some more family at home, and we are scared. And I hear this very tense conversation among adults in the family. And I can see that things are going to go really very bad. I remember one time, and this was at the beginning of the war, when most of the people were trying to get out. And we went to the main railroad station. There was the train going toward Romanian border. And the crowd of the people was immense. People were trying to get to this train any way they would, through the windows, through the doors, and we were there. My father wanted to get us out, but looking at this wild crowd, he decided, and my mother said, they are going to trample my children. Let's go home.
Yeah.
And you're reminded of that when you saw the airport in Afghanistan. And
yes, exactly.
And then
when I see the Afghanistan now, and I see what is going on in the airport,
in the Ukraine,
and now in the Ukraine, people are running for their life. They are trying to find safe place for themselves and their family. It's just exactly like 1931 in Poland.
Yeah. And that is such a crazy image. It's so funny because I know that in part of the book you talk about that y'all were walking for a long period of time to get out of Warsaw. And if you've watched the news lately about the Ukraine, you see people that have parked their cars and they're walking with their suitcases trying to get to the border. of I think it's still Romania. You know, it's on the bottom side. You know, they're trying to get into Poland and Romania and all of those countries. And so it's really interesting. You're right. It's like history has just continually repeated itself. And it's sad because we should learn from our past and not repeat those things. But do you?
Okay. People were trying to get out any way they could. And actually, the way to go is to go east because the Germans are approaching from the west. So all the highways going east were absolutely crowded. There was one line of cars, bicycles, whoever could was running east. Yeah. At some point, we ended in the little village where we have some father family. My aunt family was there. And it was close to the Russian border. And I remember our family going there to the woods, and some local person decided that he can show us how to cross the border, illegally, of course. Well, we were trying, but after little try, we didn't succeed. We went back to Warsaw, to our home. So that was it.
Yeah. So something that you've said when I've talked to you in the past, Dana, is about how you named this book Good in the Midst of Evil because you wanted to show that there were good people that helped. Can you tell me a little bit more about the good things that happened?
The good things that
Oh,
happened.
the good things that happened. Okay, maybe I would start going a little bit farther. You know, where we were in our apartment and Warsaw was bombed, and there was a lot of people that helped. After all, I don't know if I should go that far, jump over, but when we were in ghetto was closed and German idea was starving the population. So there was no improvisation. The food are not supposed to go through. And yet there was plenty of food and people were doing it, you know, in the city to the underground, to kind of channels underground, to passages between two houses. There was a lot of smuggling.
Well, there wasn't plenty of food because people were
There
starving.
wasn't plenty of food,
but
no.
there
And
were
whatever food it was of course,
smuggled in.
was very, very pricey. You have to really have a lot of money to afford it because the prices were, after all, the price was included with the people who were smuggling it.
Yeah.
Everything to be eaten had to be smuggled, illegal. So there was a lot of, the whole idea of Germans at that time was, at the beginning, kill the population by starving. If there was no food allowed to go to the ghetto, people were just simply dying of starvation. If the only food was smuggled under the threat of death, of course, it was very, very expensive, whatever was it. I would say, and I said it in the book, we were in the very, very good position because we were very assimilated. We had family on the Aryan side. We had friends on the Aryan side. So everybody was helping us. Of course, risking their life.
Yeah.
Actually, at this point, in the ghetto, at this point generally under German occupation, everything was punishable by death. I would say living was punished by death. You couldn't smuggle food. I don't know, I had illegal school.
Yeah.
Teaching was punishable by death. Learning was punishable by death. If I would be caught in the school book somewhere outside, well, I'm dead. And that's how it was.
Well,
So do you
Now,
think,
now when you go to school and you think that there was time in your life when learning from the school book was punishable by death, you sort of feel how valuable those school books are.
yeah. Did you do you think when you were in the ghetto that you processed that it was punishable by death, or do you think that now you know it was? How much did you process at that time?
yeah, you knew it was and it was punishable by
I
that.
knew it was punishable by death. It
Yeah.
was announced on the street, on everything. They were putting announcement on the walls.
Yeah,
Schools are forbidden.
if you give a piece of bread to somebody,
If you give piece of bread to the Jewish girl, you punish by death.
Oh wow. It's just crazy. What about so in the book you talk a little bit about going to the Catholic orphanage and being there. What was that like for you?
What it feels now for me,
what it was like for you at the orphanage.
the orphanage actually, it was very, very nice. It was pleasant. Before, I read a lot of books. They were all this, they were not children books, they were the older children books. And I had all those books about the girls on the boarding schools. And when I was in the orphanage, I felt, okay, now I am one of those girls in the boarding schools. So I didn't, people were now asking, do you suffer that you were torn out of your family, that you didn't see your father, your mother? No, I didn't. I sort of adjusted to this other way of life very quickly. And to tell you the truth, I had a discussion later now with the friends who went to World War II just about like me. And this is what she said, you know, we were just going from one identity to another, just like nothing. Yesterday I was Lilka Myron. 2 days later, I was Ala. Then 10 days later, I was Danka Wozniak. And I was going from one identity to the other. And sometimes it was a little bit hard because you might mix this up. You might get mixed up. At some point, when I got out of the ghetto and was sent to the country, and I was supposed to pose as Polish country girl, I didn't know the customs. I didn't know the religion. I was supposed to go to church with everybody and make the impression that I know what I'm doing. And of course I didn't. And at some point it was almost like you are asking to play the role, but you are not given the script. And if you mix up the script, you're punishable by death. So it was kind of hard.
Yeah.
When I was sent to the country, I was a city kid. I was fine in Warsaw streets. I was completely lost in the woods. And yet I had to go there and I had to play the game, and I couldn't show up that I don't know my role. So this was hard.
Yeah. Did you I want to kind of touch on like what of the places that you went, like the orphanage and then out into the country and then living with the older woman that you talk about in the book, where did you feel the safest of those places?
What
Where did you feel the safest?
What did
Probably in the orphanage, no? where did you feel the safest
Okay, the
from all the
safest,
different places?
I think the orphanage.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that, yes. Because the other girls were torn out of their families. They have their own problems. So if I have a lot of my own problems, I was just one of many.
Sure.
Of course, my problems were different, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And you
And
never, huh?
the other way, in the orphanage, there was a lot of rules and regulations, and they make me somehow feel safe. I was one of the kids, and I told you before, when I was reading the books about the boarding school, I was just one of the kids in the boarding school.
Mhm.
We had a lot of rules and regulations, but it was almost like the life was safer with all these rules and regulations.
Yeah. Makes sense. Did you now I know at some point you were reunited with your mother and your brother before the end of the war, and then at the end of the war y'all came back into Warsaw. And you talk a little bit in the book about what that was like to go back into Warsaw. When you I know that you've gone to visit Warsaw since then as an adult. Is there anything in particular that stood out to you about going back?
Well, first of all, I saw Warsaw shortly after liberation. The Warsaw was liberated on January 17th. And I think I was there first time sometime in February.
Mm.
And this was a shock. This was the biggest shock in my life. It was as big shock as in the ghetto when you look at the streets that are lined with people dying of starvation or some dead. And here you come to the main cross section of the city, the place that I knew. And we came with some trucks, and the truck guy let us out in the main crossing of the city, and I got out of the truck and I didn't know where I am. I was right in the middle of the solid piece of rubble. They were ruins, they were rubble wherever I go. I couldn't know where the street was and where the houses were. Normally in town, in the city, you have the street that is street and there are houses on both sides. There was one solid piece of rubble. There was nothing.
Wow.
And it happened like this, mainly before the Warsaw was not bombed. Germans, after Warsaw uprising, and I have to go back into history, right before the end of the war, this was Polish underground. They wanted to liberate the city and meet the army, that is the East Front army, already liberated. Well, Stalin had different idea about it. He didn't want people to liberate themselves. They want to take the whole, it was all his.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
credit. He wanted to take all credit. So it was like Germans were going, they had time because Russians liberated most of the Polish area
Mhm.
east of the city and stopped. And the army just stopped and they didn't go any further. Okay, do something.
did the
And,
and but you
he was waiting for German to dynamite the city. They systematically going from one block to the other and blowing it up. So the city was not bombed. It was systematically detonated.
wow.
And this is how the Warsaw looked.
Yeah.
As
Did
I
you-
said, it wasn't bomb the city. It was
Yeah.
everywhere was just piece of rubble because they were detonated one house after another.
Wow. So after the war, did you stay in Poland for any amount of time or did you go to Israel?
Well, I went to Israel. That was some completely different story. You know, many Jewish people after World War II, they came to the place where they spent their life and they couldn't find anybody alive that they know.
Mhm.
And they just went to Israel because this was the place that welcomed them. They were lonely anyway. When we were very much connected with Poland, I had a family in Poland. My mother's sister were married Christians and we had a lot of friends. So I didn't have any ties with Israel.
Right.
I didn't want it to go to Israel. It wasn't people, Jewish people were going to Israel because they couldn't find anybody. I had everybody there. I had a lot of friends, I had family. And Israel was foreign country for me. So why did I go to Israel? This is what I asked her. It was just my personal life.
Yeah.
My personal life was in ruin. My husband left. I was alone with a little kid. And my family emigrated to Israel. So at least I had family there. So this is how I went.
And then they said that, you know, if you came to Israel, you had an opportunity to get to America. So that was
Yeah,
like,
that was another thing.
Wow.
I
like a-
came to Israel with the idea that, first of all, that was the family thing, that my brother is getting married with a woman who has already all the paper, immigration paper, and they are ready to emigrate to America. They are all going. If they are going to be married now, they both go.
Mhm.
And the idea was, if you will go now, you will have the opportunity somehow to join them. This was a little bit wishful thinking, but it turned out just like that. Sometimes you have to wait a little longer, but the
So-
first thing I did when I got to Israel, I went to the American embassy and put my paper for immigration. So
Yeah.
I went to Israel with idea just don't want to stay there, that this is the place in between, especially when my family is going to America.
Yeah. Did your mother go to America too?
yeah,
She did.
What?
yeah.
Yes, yes.
Grandma came to America too,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Did how old were you when you immigrated to the United States?
Me?
Yes.
I was 33.
I was 9.
She was 9.
So there was quite a bit of time in between the end of the war and you coming to the United States.
Yeah,
Well, we spent 2 years in Israel, not quite 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Well,
of course, when the war ended, Yvona was,
well, I wasn't born yet when
no,
the
she
war
wasn't
ended.
born yet.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, no, we, the war ended in 45 or 44, maybe in Poland, and then
And you were, yeah, you were
we-
born in
we came
55.
we came to the States in 1964. So yeah,
I left Poland
20
in
years later.
1962.
Okay.
So we went from Poland to Israel, 1962, and spent 2 years there and went to America.
Okay. So, and then you came to Chicago, and what was that like for you to come to the United States at that time?
Well, I couldn't say it was shock, but it was just so much different.
I'm sure.
Tell them about the pizza.
This is the thing. I remember going with at that time, my husband to the restaurant, and before we ate pizza, and I really liked it. And the waiter asked me what we want. So I look at it and I said, well, there's two of us, so we are ordered 2 medium pizza. And when we got 2 medium pizza,
And they were huge.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Not,
The other
not
thing,
small.
the same thing. We ate everything, and then the waiter asked me, do I want the doggy bag? And I said, no, I don't have a dog.
Yes.
So that's the thing, you have to know the customs.
You do. You're exactly right. And so you grew up speaking Polish.
Yeah.
And then in Israel, what did they speak? Did you still speak Polish there, or did you have to learn a different language?
Well, in Poland, in Israel, first of all, I was mostly with my family and with my friends. We were
So
in
they all
Israel,
spoke Polish.
in Polish.
Yeah.
But of course, I had to learn Hebrew. And I learned enough that I could get around in the store. I was even working, and I could get around at work, probably because there was at that time, we had one guy who was Romanian, one guy who was somebody else. There were a few Polish people there. And actually, you could speak all different languages. I could hear a lot of English over there in Polytechnic School in Technion on Haifa.
Yeah.
There was very little Hebrew. And you could probably get around with English, French, German, anything.
Yeah. So did you know German also?
If I what?
If you knew German.
I know maybe few words because of the World War II, but
But not fluent.
I had 1 year in school, I had German.
Okay.
But in school, I had mostly French. I had 5 years of French, and I think 1 year of English.
Okay. So then when you came to the United States, you had to learn more English, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah. So after all of this, which I think it's just amazing to have lived through that and then lived on and had to, to continue your life after all of that trauma at a young age. So what did you do as a career, Dana?
What was your career?
Oh, well,
You were a chemist and then a biochemist.
I was working in biochemistry. In Poland, I was working in organic chemistry, actually technology of polymers.
Okay.
So I was working in polymers, in plastics. This was the specialty in the university. But then there was technology of drugs. When I came to the States, I got the job, University of Chicago, in biochemistry department.
Tell
And-
them, tell them how you went. You were looking for a job
Oh,
in the
yeah.
pharmaceutical companies.
This is very interesting. This tells you about something about America. I finished Polytechnical School. On my year, there was just about as many girls as boys. 50% of chemical engineers were women.
Mhm.
I came to the States, and because I had the technology of drugs as my specialty, I went to one of the big pharmaceutical companies that had R&D department, research development, and I thought that this is the place that I should look for a job. And he says, well, your credentials are perfect, but we never employ women in this position. And I was completely stunned. I couldn't understand what he's talking about.
Mhm.
I said, what do you mean? There was as many girls as boys in the chemistry department. You never employ women in this position. What do you do with all your graduates, women graduates? Oh, we don't have them.
Wow.
And this is what I learned.
Yeah.
I learned you are graduating in chemistry. You are good in science. Well, woman is supposed to be good in art. Well, what can I say? Art was the only subject in school I ever failed.
Oh, yeah. You were very
Always
much a technology person.
And now I'm telling that as somebody who knows math and science, I shouldn't be a woman. What I'm supposed to do?
You can't change that you're a woman, can you? No, that I imagine that they just had not ever dealt with a strong-willed Polish woman before.
Yeah.
And then a friend of hers, actually the people that sponsored us, right? Warsaw, she suggested you go look for a job at the
Oh, yeah. Okay. She said, don't go. I told her about what happened when I went to the pharmaceutical company. And she
Mhm.
says, oh, don't even try. Go to university. I went to university and I got a job like nothing in biochemistry department. And then we are doing some kind of research. And I talked to the woman who hired me. I said, there's a lot of biology in it. And I have a lot of chemistry, but I don't know if I have enough biology to be good in this job. And she looked at me and she said, I found from my own experience, it is much easier to teach somebody who is a chemist the biology that is involved in the other way around.
Yeah,
So I got the job
that's great.
in biochemistry department.
Yeah. And then I mean now you love I'm sure that you probably are not currently gardening, but you do love to garden and grow things, and which is also I think really an art form in its own way. So you enjoyed all of that too. And then y'all right now live in upper state New York.
Mhm.
So, and how long have y'all been there?
How long are
We moved here and well,
you want to here
In
or in
19
the States?
well, we moved from Chicago
Okay.
to Philadelphia for 3 years,
So
and then we
Syracuse
moved
for
to
6 years.
to central New York for 6 years. Syracuse and then a suburb of Syracuse, the west. And then
I
we
moved here in 1974.
yeah, between my freshman and sophomore years of college.
Okay.
I was 19
Okay.
when they bought this house that we're sitting in right now talking to you.
Oh,
And
wow.
why
Yeah.
we moved here when I was 6 years in Syracuse, working mostly in chemical research, and I was in upstate medical. And we were coming here for vacation. And my dream was, if I would be able to get a job here, I would move immediately. And then I found the Tudor Institute. I applied for a job and I got it. So we moved here. So this is why we are here since 1974. I was 5 years in Tudor. Then I moved to Cell Science Center. I was in Cell Science Center, I think probably about 12 years.
That's in Lake Placid.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
And then she retired from there. And then she started gardening. Well, she started gardening before, but you know, Mega started gardening after she retired because she had the time.
Yes, I had more time.
yeah. That's amazing. It's amazing. So, Dana, what would you want people that read your book? What do you want them to know about you? Or, you know, what is something I think I told you when I read it, the first time I read it in several days. But the second time I read through it when I was editing, I read it all in one day. And it was just so powerful to do it that way, because when you read it in smaller chunks, I think you still get the power, but you're kind of removing yourself from it in between. But when you read it all at one time, you really get the powerfulness of everything that happened and that you went through. And it just makes you, I mean, I had chills going down my back as I was reading it, just going like, you know, this is just amazing story. It's like something that you would read out of a, you know, you would see in a movie or in a fiction book, but all of these things happened. And so I think that, is there anything that you want the readers of the book to really know and understand going into the book?
I wanted to tell you, I read this book. Very interesting. I'm reading the book about somebody else. Was it me?
Not you.
She's been reading the book since we got it in the mail.
I am reading a little
Even though Sue
chapter,
wrote it.
and it's sort of, I am getting, you know, I have several lives.
Oh, yes. Yes.
My life before World War II, a sort of pampered little kid, and then during World War II, and the time in ghetto and secret school. And if you think that when I was in ghetto in secret school, if I would be caught with a school book, it means death sentence immediately.
Yep.
Yeah.
You are not supposed to be reading the books or being taught.
You know, and that's,
Then, you know,
yeah. That would be just crazy. And I think we don't appreciate the right that we have to learn sometimes, that other people do not have that same right sometimes. So
you think that you're going to school, and there's a death penalty, what you are doing, just by going to school. Going to school makes the completely different idea.
yeah, it does. It really does.
And then after school, when I was in the country, you know what my biggest problem was? When I was for half a year in the country, in Poland, Polish country, at the house of local teacher, I was city kid. I was feeling fine in the street corner.
Yeah.
But when I was put in the woods, it was so foreign.
But now you love the woods.
And
And now you love the way, I know, isn't that crazy?
I cannot understand. I was there the first time and they told me that I'm supposed to pick berries. And my question is, what are the berries?
Yeah. You definitely have lived many lives. I would agree with that. Very different.
I
And had,
love it.
yeah, and had very, very different names. And you do talk about that in the book about what your name was at certain parts. And so, yeah, I think that that's very interesting. And I've been blessed enough to see pictures of you and Ivana on your snowshoes.
Yeah.
To get an idea of what that looks like, because we don't really have snow here, so I'm a little jealous. But I think it's very interesting. Ivana, what was it like to work with your mom on this book?
Um, it was interesting. It was a lot of the stuff when I grew up, when I was in high school, she wouldn't talk about it back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
I
so
remember this.
it was when I was living in Rochester, actually, and I started taking the manuscript she wrote for my cousins and I, and then the other manuscript she wrote in Polish for her friends. And then I realized they weren't both the same. And so I started putting them together and sort of editing it a little bit,
Yeah.
to make it one manuscript and one story. And, it was interesting because a lot of, now she talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
But
you
back
know,
then she wouldn't talk about it much.
when you
So,
were in school and you were asking me, you were talking about in school about World War II, and you were asking me to tell you. And my answer was, I don't want to talk about it.
yeah, I remember.
For longest time, I don't want to talk about it. And then I started talking, and I started talking mainly because my brother and I have few cousins that survive and few other people, and they started bugging me. You remember, we don't,
Yeah.
because when I was 7, my brother was 4.
Yeah.
So I
Great.
remember
Yeah.
things.
He's 5 years younger.
And they
yeah.
said, write it down so everybody in the family would know. So this is when I started writing this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it just speaks volumes that you took the time to do this, because I think that this type of history needs to be preserved, and people need to know what happened and what it felt like to go through that. And so I think that you're very brave to do that, because I know that it probably was not easy to remember all of that stuff.
It's
Yeah.
not easy to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to watch what's going on in Ukraine, because it's like reliving the same thing she lived through before.
Yeah.
We were escaping the war so many times. 1939, we were escaping the war. 1945, we were again escaping the war.
Yeah.
And here you have people who are running for their lives because they are escaping the war.
Yep.
Yeah.
And friends in Poland who have refugees in their homes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
And I am looking, on the television and seeing the people who are trying to escape board the train. And I see the same picture when we were trying to board the train to escape Poland.
yeah, that is definitely I'm sure that is definitely not great to try to see that. And it's been 60 something, well, more than that. It's been what, 80 years, and we're still seeing that same stuff being played out. But and hopefully the situation in the Ukraine, we have learned not to be commonplace while stuff like that happens. So I think that Hitler got a lot pretty far in his journey before I think people start standing up against him. So I hope that helps Ukraine a little bit. But it is sad. It's so sad and
Now
frustrating.
we can see it all on TV. Back then, they just had newspapers and radio.
Yeah.
They didn't have computers and televisions and smartphones.
Right, right. And now, you know, we
Didn't
have,
know what is going on. You know,
Yeah.
Yvonne, sometimes I think because we didn't know so fast and so deeply what is going on, it was easier.
and you're right, it may have been easier not
the
to know the
public offers.
extent. Yeah.
What eyes do not see, the heart do not hurt.
Was
If
it,
I don't see it, your heart don't hurt.
Mm. Oh, your
Mm.
heart. But yeah,
if you don't see it, your heart doesn't hurt.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is exactly the same thing now.
Yeah. I know. It is very sad. Very, very sad. But well,
Yeah.
ladies,
See that there's good people and bad people, and sometimes it's like the same person even. Yeah, it's
You know how it is. In 1944 and 45, we welcomed the Russian army because they were fighting Germans,
mhm,
and they were the good guys.
yeah.
And I remember the Russian soldiers, and we welcomed them. We greet them with bread, and they were good.
And they were good. You're right.
And they were good. And they were fighting Germans. They were liberators.
Mhm.
And now,
Now they're bad. Yeah. And yeah, and Germany is one of the countries that's standing up against him, you know.
Yes.
So,
yep.
you
but,
sort of, after seeing all these things in my life, I cannot put together, and they are the same people, are they?
I don't know.
I remember Germans, and I remember what was going on in Poland that was occupied by Germany.
Mhm.
And they were horrid. And now we have a lot of German friends.
Yeah.
They are nice
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. A lot can change in,
Yeah.
you know, so many years, a lot can change. But so I'm super excited to bring this book out into the world. We have a few weeks until it's on shelves, but it's available on Amazon and the Clear Fork website right now. And so I just encourage anybody that has listened to this conversation to go and get yourself a copy. You will be glad that you did. It's a very good read, and it really shows you what it was like to be a child during that time. And also, I think you know, something that Dana has said that just really sticks out to me about it is just that there was good that came through this time, and there were good people. And so you can kind of
It's nice to
see,
be on the other side.
yes, 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 definitely. Yes, and the many lives that she lived. So
Oh, if the dog wants to go out,
the dog wants to go out. Well, I will talk to you ladies later. Thank you so much for your time, Dana, and talking and telling us all about your story.
well, the stories are horrid. When I'm now reading the book and reading my own words and my own story, what I was in the ghetto, in the Warsaw ghetto, it was horrible.
Yeah, it
And I
was.
went through all this, and I'm still alive, and I'm still able to think straight. And I'm
Yes.
still able to look at people and like them. I'm still able to have German friends.
Yes. And that speaks volumes to the person that you are too. Definitely.
And sometimes I see in the movie or in the news, I see what is going on in Germany. And my God, I am all with those people.
Yeah.
And then were they the same Germans that I saw when I was at the street of ghetto? And I was scared to death. And looking at this scene that I have it in the book, when the soldiers killed the little kid.
They smashed his head on the wall, and then
Yeah.
she says to me, doesn't that man, he goes home to his family and his kids?
The war ended and he's coming home, and how he can face his wife and his children.
Yeah. I know. That would just be, there's a term for that called compassion fatigue, where you almost lose the humanization of people because you're tired or you're experiencing so much horrible stuff that you can't provide, you don't have compassion for things anymore. You dehumanize people. Yeah. And I'm sure that that's what happened to a lot of the soldiers. So yeah, it's hard to imagine what it would have been like. Yeah, definitely. We have no idea.
I was never in the situation when I am the dictator and I am the winner. So I cannot even imagine myself in the skin of these Germans that are coming to Poland, because I was always on the other side.
Right. Yeah.
But what do they think? I cannot understand.
No.
And even, now, you have the war, you have war in Afghanistan, you have war here and there. And sometimes you see the American soldiers. Do you remember there was something that were showing when there was American soldier and they were trying to get rid of there was some Arabian country. And I see this big American soldier with all the arms on him, getting into this little house with some women and kids are huddling in the corner and making, like, here, I am the winner. I am the king of the world.
Yeah. I know. The war is horrible.
The war is horrible.
Yeah. To everybody. Yes. Very much so.
And as I say, I was in the ghetto. I was on the other side.
Yeah.
What the Germans were thinking? How they could, and it somehow sits in us too. When you start dividing people for better and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the racial strife in this country.
Yeah.
And there's people that think that you are whiter, so you are better, or you are black, so you are worse. It's a thing. When I was little Jewish girl, I was on the other side of the racial strife. I was the wrong race.
Yeah.
So then I realized how nice it is to be the right race and the wrong race.
Yeah.
I remember you, Yvona. I don't know. This is how Yvona grew up, probably because you grew up in our house. And I remember when there was a counselor when we were in Philadelphia, and she was in school, and there was pretty integrated school.
Oh, yeah.
And they told me, the counselor told me, you know, Yvona has very strange relationship with colored kids. She doesn't see the color.
Right. I think,
She's
yeah,
colorblind.
I'm sure that it's part of your
And this-
upbringing.
Yes, why should she?
Yeah. You're exactly right. Why should she? We shouldn't. Yeah. And that's a really good point. And I think you also did a very good job of teaching Ivana how to have a wonderful heart to her friends. And well, been lucky to be on the recipient end of that heart. So
You just have to see people as people.
you're exactly right. Everybody is just people.
Yeah.
Yep. Nothing makes anybody else more special than the other person.
Boy, I learned this thing in the ghetto when I was on the other side.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this time today and let me talk to you and telling me about all of this. And I hope you enjoy the book.
No, I hope that if you will write of this a little bit, and you will sort of convey, we were on the other side, we were the wrong race. And
Yeah.
now there are other people, and we are the right race. Now, what does it mean?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. You're exactly right.
Okay.
Yes. Have a wonderful afternoon, ladies.
Yes.
All right, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.